Good morning. Give it a few minutes. Dropping in the agenda. Seeing our chair yet. How's everybody doing on this Friday?
It's a good day. It's Friday.
It
Doing
is
well, thanks.
good. And I was like, it is finally Friday. It's been a very long week. All right, updating that access to the agenda, everybody. So give it just a second. All right, please let me know if anybody else is having issues accessing that document. Right. Looks like we're missing quite a few of our board members. I'm going to share my screen so that we can have the agenda in front of us. Oh, thanks for letting me know, Haley. Apparently there's an old link and there were several other people in the old link. 1 second to see if maybe. Too many tabs. Okay. I've lost my ability to see everybody now that I'm sharing my screen, so I apologize. I'm going to zoom this in real quick. Sorry about this, everybody. It's taking just a little longer than intended. Okay. There we go. Now I can see people. Hi, Michelle. Katie. I'm not seeing Jen. Michelle, would you like to take over as far as member roll call? We can go through the agenda.
Sure. Good morning. Happy Friday. Let me pull up. I got an email that Cassie was going to be a few minutes late. Board members, 1, 2, 3, 4. We had last month's meetings to approve too, didn't we? Because we didn't have a quorum.
Yes.
Okay. And we are not there this time either. Did you get an email from Jen? I didn't last month either when she didn't come.
No, and I just talked to her at the subcommittee agenda planning, and she was planning on coming. Haley did mention, Haley Klingel had chatted me and said there's an old link out there somewhere. So
There is an old link. In fact, that's where I was at 9:50 or 9:55. It's from Ryan. So
okay.
everyone may just want to go through if you've got 2 links in your calendar. The one that ends in 37 is from Ryan, and you can go ahead and delete that. And the one that ends in 34 is the one from Caitlin.
Yes, definitely need the one from Caitlin.
Yep. Yep. But there are old recurring meetings out there. Anywho, okie dokie. We will wait if someone can kind of just keep an eye on the chat. And if you count and we end up with a quorum, we can go back through and approve minutes. Let's see. We are still working on recruiting for the board. And again, there are specific seats. So what you see listed in the agenda there are the different types of seats that we are looking for. Scott, if you go through your calendar, there are 2 meetings. One of them is going to be sent by Ryan Templeton, who was the former host, and the Zoom link ends in a 37 question mark. The other links are sent by Caitlin, and those are the ones you want. And that link ends in 34 with a question mark. So that's the link you want.
Okay, so I'll keep the 3-4. I have both of those meeting series from Caitlin, so that's why it's confusing.
Oh, okay, there you go. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's fine. As long as you've got the one from Caitlin. When I went into the wrong one this morning, I just deleted the whole recurring thing. Okie doke. So we're still doing board recruitment, and they are for those specific seats. And I think the applications are on this website for the Mental Health Advisory Board to fill out. So if you know anybody, share those. We did some updates last time, and we've got some more 2765 updates today. Boy, this meeting might go really fast. Some additional updates today. Ryan, I think, is here because he's going to do an update, isn't he?
He's not going to join us until 10:30. He has to work from the Capitol today. So we've got a little bit of time, and I can definitely take up some time around giving everybody the updates that we're taking to state board in a couple of weeks that will impact our 2765 world. The first one, it being around ECT for kids. We've talked about this previously, and this is actually something that I suspect Ryan will mention in his legislative update because there was a 2025 bill that impacted this. So we originally started the revision on the ECT rules. So electroconvulsive therapy. Stop. I'm trying to stop myself from talking in shorthand all the time. It's hard to do. We all live in a world of acronyms, and like everybody's different. And but in 2024, there was a legislative change that would allow for kids under the age of 15 to receive ECT treatment. But there was very specific criteria that had to be met, things like a diagnosis of malignant catatonia and 2 physicians signing off that are both trained in electroconvulsive therapy. 2025 update is they got rid of that diagnosis requirement. And so that's something that you will see reflected in the updated Chapter 11 rules for our providers that are providing ECT. Another one that came up was around consent age for feeding tube placement. This has been a request from providers for a while. So after like working with our AGs, and kind of narrowing down like what does statute actually say, because they don't call out feeding tubes specifically, it was decided that that age of consent is going to be ages 15 and up, very similar to the hospitalization under 2765. So we added that language in there to make it very clear of how that looks. That will also be in our eating disorder rules update when we go to state board later this fall. And then there's some other statutory cleanup that is happening. So there was some references under involuntary medication and emergency medication that referred to 2765-108 when it should have referred to 2765-108.5. So the 0.5 is that incompetent to proceed to short-term certification pathway, and the 108 was around care coordination. So the care coordination is just not applicable to that particular section of rule. I tried to slow down to give us some more time. That didn't work, did it? Yeah. I'll say, what else can we discuss while we're waiting on Ryan? I don't want us to get into any big conversations to have them interrupted. Anybody have questions kind of about what state board is doing?
I was just going to say questions are how people are faring in their agencies and departments with some of the changes that are out there.
And it looks like Tom has his hand up.
Well, since we have a couple of minutes, I just wanted to give an update about Ryan. He is covering the rest of the legislative session, usually down at the Capitol because Erica is out on some family leave. So he's doing double duty as our division director in that area and also spending time down at the Capitol and that very necessary work. So that's some of his situation. I also just wanted to give a very brief update about State Board of Human Services members. I think Jessica did a fantastic job going over what some of the changes are. And we're going back to the board on the 9th for our first reading for some of these changes and probably a month off and then back for second reading for some of these changes. And then, of course, Jessica alluded to what's coming later this year with some more substantive changes. But there's been some changes on the board as people termed off. And we will have as new members Jeff Baker, Megan Lovelace, and Mary Young. I believe that they were confirmed by the Senate earlier this week. I didn't anticipate any trouble with that, but I didn't actually get any of that final resolution from Ryan. So maybe he can give us those updates when he joins in a few minutes. So I just wanted to give that brief FYI to this particular group. And Michelle, I think that you were in the process of asking some other questions. So forgive me if I cut you off with raising
No,
my hand.
not at all. Not at all.
Any questions about any of that? Thanks, everybody. I think back to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Tom. No, I think the only last question that I had was anything folks are specifically seeing in their agencies, any hurdles, any struggles, any questions, community things. We're all in different places around the state. Anything that has to do with any component of 2765, changes, legislation, funding, Medicaid, licensing. Any questions anyone else might have?
Yeah, Michelle, I mean, I think just kind of leading in from that, I just, I want to recognize that it's a really challenging time to be in public service, and there have been a lot of changes at all levels of government. And so, I mean, first, thank you to Tom and I mean, all of you at the BHA who are persevering and advocating for us at this point. And I would also just be interested to hear, like, I see start and stop funding orders. I know the legislation session. If you have any like high level 10,000-foot thoughts on like BHA changes that we might expect to see coming downstream in the next few months.
I can speak to some of that if that's okay with the group.
Please.
Thank you, Michelle. I think you're exactly right, Scott. I think there are two things happening. Um, Colorado, Colorado has a relatively unprecedented budget crisis of its own, with about $1.2 billion of budget deficit, and simultaneously dealing with new administration and priorities coming from Washington. And I think that's what you're talking about in terms of start stops, with certain kinds of funding, and of course, BHA and lots of other parts of state governments and parts of Colorado state government rely on block grant dollars, and in our case, substance use and mental health block grant dollars that fund a lot of the work. So think pass-through dollars that come to BHA, and then we pass through those dollars to providers directly, providers that we both license and contract with to do those important services for Colorado citizens. And it's been a bit of a roller coaster, if I may editorialize a little bit, in terms of, well, no, you don't get that money anymore, state of Colorado, so stop spending on that. Think ARPA. And then, of course, lawsuits or injunctions, to be specific, to allow that money to continue to flow. So then we recommunicate with providers and say, you can bill minus this little period of time. So bills prior and bills after, invoices specifically, we can continue to reimburse. I think that the other phase is people getting information, organizations, individuals, and we in state government getting information about potential plans to eliminate parts of state government. Think SAMHSA, a lot of where these block grant dollars flow, and perhaps eliminating it, combining parts of federal government, and what that may mean for additional cuts. The two important things to remember: those communications, whether direct or leaked, and I think that sometimes we are relying on leaked documents that may propose to eliminate portions of federal government, are part of a administration's proposed budget plans. Remember that Congress has to hear those proposed plans and determine whether it wants to incorporate those proposed plans into its federal budget. Traditionally, Congress didn't, or hasn't, at least all the time, incorporated what the White House proposes as a federal budget. I think that we've got a different arrangement between the White House administration and Congress. So I would again editorialize that it seems more likely that they would consider the White House's budget. Also, remember that we're operating under a continuing resolution right now in the federal budget. All of which really adds up to, we don't really know, and it depends. The second point I was alluding to is that states, just like Colorado, join lawsuits against the Trump administration to either continue funding, to block certain kinds of action, and that always, perhaps not always, that can affect the outcome of any kinds of actions that flow from the current administration. That's a lot of moving parts. That's a lot of complications. It's a lot of uncertainty. So our work at BHA is we press forward with the important work that we do to help you do all the important work that you do, until we're told to stop or the money gets turned off. So a specific example of that is that we are in the middle of a planning grant, the CCBHC planning grant, which seeks to expand providers in certain kinds of services to do mental health and substance use services. And when we meet with our federal partners, we ask the question every single time, is the money continuing to flow? And the answer is yes, for now, the money continues to flow. So we press forward even though it's uncertain. And I think at the end of the day, that's all we can really do. Pause for a moment, see if that information's helpful. Any other questions I can try to answer.
I'll just add to that. Everything you just said, Tom, is 100% of what I've been hearing and chatting with people about as well. I was on a SAMHSA call the other day. I do work with 25 of the pilot sites around the country who have these grants, 3 and 4 year grants, and the assumption at this moment is it's not the service money that's going away at SAMHSA. It's a lot of the administrative positions and money. So a lot of people have been asking, are our grants going to stop? Do our programs have to change? And it sounds like it's not the programming dollars at this point. It's a lot of just the duplicative administrative dollars.
I agree. I think that's the top line, and then the things that swirl probably at the rumor level are, does the administration want to roll back Medicaid waivers and make Medicaid more of a insurance program for folks that are in a lower socioeconomic bracket and maybe have some durable medical equipment kinds of things that are roped into, think 20 years ago or 30 years ago when Medicaid was primarily that. And so I think that frightens people. I think that's, again, still rumor mill kind of level. We work with our Colorado Department of Law, who's tied in to this, and with, of course, the governor's office, who is also tied in to get substantive information as soon as it's available. Again, it's hard because there is just a lot of uncertainty. I don't know how else to say that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions, comments, things that you're noticing? Rumors you're hearing. Let's know what's in the rumor mill and what we can look to confirm or deny. Anybody?
I have something completely unrelated. We have a final candidate for our eating disorder treatment and recovery licensing position. I have an offer to make them today. Fingers crossed they accept it and they'll be joining our 2765 team.
Yay!
Feels like a very long time coming.
Doesn't it?
Yes.
Isn't that the majority of state positions, though? They seem to take forever.
I mean, technically we're getting them early because the funding doesn't start until July 1. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'll take whatever I can get because there's already a lot of work happening. And I will be very happy to share the load. That's what I will say.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Nobody else, huh? Dr. Simpson, can I put you on the spot for just a second?
Sure.
I know the university is seeking some feedback. We had talked about some presentations. Is that something you would like to do in more places to be able to talk about services? Would this be a good group at some point to kind of present some of what y'all are trying to do?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. I can give a little context for that. So, my role at the University of Colorado is the division director for community population and public mental health. And so our group includes faculty who are working across a lot of public and community locations like Fort Logan, Pueblo, Department of Corrections, training programs for the BHA and CDPHE. And so we are in trying to think about opportunities to connect with organizations across the state. We are starting we're kind of starting some listening tours and community meetings. And so I had connected with Michelle. We're just kind of starting on this project. I connected with Michelle offline about coming out to Garfield, Pitkin counties. And so we're going to be reaching out over the next couple. And so we're just kind of starting on this. We're going to see how that goes and get feedback and kind of figure out our logistics. But as the months go on, I'll be reaching back out and hopefully finding some opportunities to come out. And we're doing kind of community site presentations, talking a little bit about work that's happening within the Department of Psychiatry at the School of Medicine, programs that we have that I think are beneficial, whether for community members or your organizations or healthcare organizations. And then really want to hear kind of about some of the challenges and try to figure out like where we can serve communities because we are, we're the University of Colorado and we're a state medical school and want to try to figure out those opportunities. So I think, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't, if there's interest in the committee, you could talk a little bit more in this setting, but I would, I think probably more interested in just thinking offline and finding some opportunities to get out of the Denver metro area and talk a little bit about programs that we have that are working statewide for people. So
Thank you.
thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, oh, you're welcome. And I really think that we live in this day and age where I feel like historically we all talk about collaboration and communication and working together and using resources, but I just really feel like now more than ever, it's really important that we connect and do that. And we know what other agencies do and how they can help us. I think that's one of the things I value the most is that if someone comes to me with a question, there's a pretty decent chance I'm not going to know the answer, but boy, do I know where to go to find those answers because I have connections to all of you. And I think we're all in that boat. And in times of uncertainty, where everywhere you go, someone's panicking about something. I think it's just nice for us all to lean on our resources, relationships, and just kind of be able to ask each other how to get through. So again, we can keep rumor mills gone. We can function from fact. And that way, us at the top, we have the ability to calm and guide and support those around us as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well, and it's a good reminder. It's like there's so many people doing great work. I mean, across Colorado and then across the country, and just breaking down these silos and making connections is, yeah, very BHA-esque, which I think is why we're here.
Scott, I'll briefly introduce myself and say hi to everybody. I'm a nurse and program development manager with an organization that is nursing in people's homes, shelters, etc., for behavioral health focus. That's our specialty, along with wound care and everything else. And I had a fantastic meeting with Judith at our office in Colorado Springs last week. And she said, Marley, get on these meetings. They're open to the public. You can decide what you want to do, but we really want to get involved because we've seen the fragmentation of what's going on, trying to coordinate our patients with services. I'm a UCC student myself for a nurse practitioner in psych. So I see that there's a humongous need in the community, and it's only adding so much stress with what's going on in Washington, and all of our patients are Medicaid based. Where are we even going to be able to have nursing services, Marley? What's going on? And it's just calming a lot of those fears. We routinely work with Springs Rescue Mission down here, going twice a day, every day, even weekends, to help our patients manage their medications. Work with community partners like Peak Vista, Matthews View, a respite down here called Ascending to Health. We're trying to understand more of what the needs are, big picture, though, statewide, because our nursing team is in Springs and Pueblo, and then moving up into Denver by fall because we understand the need for support for clients dealing with mental health along with medical care is just wildly important. So I just wanted to jump on and say hi to you all, especially with how open you all seem to be to resources. Talk to Judith about, we'll look at joining boards and seeing what we need to do to get involved more with BHA, because that's relatively new to us because we've been here 2 years. I've been here longer, but the company is out of Massachusetts doing amazing work with Medicaid in Massachusetts. So we have data that shows in Colorado, we're saving the state $200,000 per patient because of reduced ER visits and other taxing on resources in the community, especially with our amazing residents and unhoused here in Colorado Springs. So I just want you all to know that you're not alone in this fight, and we're here and we're seeing people in their home. And even if I have a patient I saw for months at a McDonald's because it was a safe place we could meet while he was unhoused. And now he's getting a job at a Wendy's and housed. So that kind of stuff is not, it's little and it's small sometimes when we're looking at big picture, but please understand we're here on the ground. And if you need anything, we'd love to coordinate with you all too.
Thanks, Marlene. No,
Thanks for
that's
sharing.
not small at all. Those are monumental things. One person at a time, right? Rome wasn't built in a day. I do see Ryan has jumped on, and Ryan, I know you're splitting your time back and forth. Are you free to give legislative updates so we can then let you jump back into Capital World?
Thanks, Michelle. Yep. Day 108 of 120 of the session. So coming down to the end here, a couple big things happening, right? The long bill and the long bill narrative have passed about 60 or 70 orbital bills. There's, with the budget, one of the key things that we've been talking about over the start of the session was our BHA R1 budget request, which was roughly $3.15 million of care coordination funding. That did not make it into the long bill package, right? We were at a $1.2 billion budget deficit. So there are some cuts and requests that didn't make it through, which, yeah, that's where we're at within Colorado and our budget issues. Not a whole lot happening within the 2765 sphere of things. Some big ones that we have been talking about: the recognition of tribal court orders that has passed both chambers. That's Senate Bill 9. It has not been signed yet, but that's the one making sure that is recognizing court orders as part of the 2765 process as well. One that we watch closely this week, making its way through the House, is Senate Bill 41. That's the competency in criminal justice system services. There's a connection there with 2765 competency and incompetent to proceed to short-term certification comes up quite a bit within that competency process. So it was up, I think, in House seconds late yesterday. So we will watch that one move its way through the rest of the House. There are some House amendments, so we'll go back to the Senate for confirming those House amendments, likely next week as well. Senate Bill 42, that was the behavioral health crisis response recommendations. That one is passed and signed. It adds some stuff about BHA working through our behavioral health administrative service organizations, is making sure that we have BHA report on the sort of shortages and gaps with the crisis system supposed to be in place. So kind of an exciting piece there is making sure that we're addressing what a whole continuum of service delivery looks like and could be and should be. That was signed March 26th by the governor. One thing to be considering within this mental health advisory board is Senate Bill 199. That was the suspend the legislative interim activities. There's been some connection here with the behavioral health disorders in the criminal and juvenile justice system legislative oversight committee and that associated task force. With that BHDCJJS interim committee has moved forward. They can no longer, it will be 3 bills from them, not the traditional 5. So they are considering what they should be moving on in the 2026 session. I brought up in the last task force meeting is that think about what the Mental Health Advisory Board has been working on with the M1, consolidating the M1 process, maybe with the EC, and utilizing that interim committee to push some of that stuff, as well as some of the transportation order stuff that I think Judge Leith is going to be talking about with y'all later this morning as well. So we'll watch that one closely, make sure that this group is plugged into what's happening over in that task force and associated interim committee over the interim. ECT, electroconvulsive treatment for minors, House Bill 1070, that was signed by the governor on March 31st. There was a bill over the last couple of years making changes to that, and so it's to me more of a technical correction there to make sure that there is a pathway for kids to get ECT and not have certain conditions that would have to be met. BHA's agenda bill, House Bill 1124, universal contracting provisions, made it through. The governor signed earlier this month, so that's just making sure that there's a clear established process for what universal contracting provisions means. Right now, there's 16 statutorily required parts of universal contracting provisions. It narrows that down into 4 to make it more of a universal approach with standardized data collection, making sure that state contracts for behavioral health safety net services, that there's a connection to the larger behavioral health system, as well as establishes a grievance and complaint process or maintains that grievance and complaint process as a statewide piece. And then the last one I'll highlight here is the 1132. That was with the voters passing Proposition KK, which was the tax on firearms, firearm parts, and ammunition. That one has passed, which supports veterans mental health programs, utilizing the tax from Prop KK, kind of making sure that what the voters have approved is getting to the services that voters approved that for. Right, the last few days of session here, watching things closely as they make their way through the chambers, and long bill should get signed over the next few days here, and we will be off and running into the summer. Any questions that I can answer, advisory board?
That's amazing. There's a lot happening, huh, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, it's the end of session. Things are wild. It sounds like the meeting tomorrow, so this is the time for weekend work at the Capitol as well. So we will be here in support of BHA.
Good to know. Any other questions?
If I may, the budget RFI for the BHA and any impact on tourism. So I think, Frank, what you're asking about is the during the JBC figure setting, there was a request that BHA respond through the RFI, or request for information process, back to JBC for the 2026 session, talking about the proposal to consolidate line items within the Behavioral Health Administration. Right now, we have roughly 33 different lines for kind of individual programs, and what that would look like to merge those things together. I think that's a win for JBC to start to have that conversation about how behavioral health funding looks, at least through BHA, is there are some barriers related to if individual programs have individual lines, there's not a whole lot of ability to move funding between services based on needs as well. So that will be a thing working on over the summer with the Joint Budget Committee, getting towards the end of the calendar year to get that to JDC as they have requested. The specific impact of 2765 there is, if that goes through, I think there's potential additional types of funding related to service delivery that is impactful to the involuntary care of individuals within a more streamlined behavioral health system.
Anything that is on the table, Ryan, that you think might not pass, might not get through for one reason or another? Anything with the fiscal note, most people are just not counting on, but
yeah, and not necessarily 2765 related. One thing that we're watching closely is one of the second round of orbital bills, which means coming from the Joint Budget Committee, is Senate Bill 290, which is safety net stability payments. So allowing safety net providers, which includes comprehensives as well as federally qualified health centers, to be able to request funding through an enterprise board ran out of the healthcare policy and financing or an independent entity within healthcare policy and financing. Hey, the more funding that providers get related to providing safety net services, I think that is a good thing for behavioral health. So we're watching that one closely. I think there's an impact there related to funding, but that's running out of JVC. So we'll watch that one closely as it passed Senate appropriations this morning, 7-0. So we're watching that one closely as well as it makes its way to the floor and then through the House there. But yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those ones where we're kind of at that spot with things may get stuck in appropriations, but nothing specifically that we're watching super close related to that. We got to really push hard here.
Lovely.
And if I may come back in during the May meeting, we can have a legislative wrap up call as well, but I'll work back for you, Jess, to make sure that if I'm not invited, Jess has the information to provide to you then.
That would be wonderful if we could put Ryan back on the agenda in May, Jessica.
I can do that. And I'm really hoping that Ryan can be there because I don't trust myself to deliver such important information.
I think that'd be great. I think that would be great. Anyone else? Questions, comments, thoughts? Okie dokie. All right. Well, this is going to be a Friday of whipping through stuff and giving people time back. Jess, can you pull the agenda back up, please?
Yes. Sorry about that.
Oh, no.
Too many tabs open and then I closed something and I was like, my bad. I don't even know.
Close something and it's the wrong thing.
Yeah.
All right. So Ryan gave his updates. What time you expect to be there till tonight, Ryan? 12 hours ahead of you?
Probably not today, as my kids are in Jefferson County Public Schools, so they are home today. So I will be rushing back to them. So,
Good for you. Good for you. We'll enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the weekend.
as well.
Okie dokie. Moving on, transportation orders. We talked a little bit about this in the last two meetings. It came up at different times for different reasons. And that will be next on our agenda. However, are you going to do that, Jess? Or
No, we have a special guest.
Actually, your Judge Leith is here.
Yes.
Hi. So, does everybody have the draft available?
Let me see if I can pull that out. Judge Lee, I don't know if you were aware, Caitlin has been temporarily reassigned, so I'm trying to be Caitlin. It's a little more challenging than I anticipated. So let me see if I can find that draft and drop it in the chat for everybody.
She makes it look very easy, doesn't she?
She makes it look flawless. Like, I tell you what.
Just don't resend meeting invites and we're all good.
I say, Judge Lath, if you would like to go ahead and get started while I'm digging for it.
Sure. So I want to stress this is a draft. And I initially put it together at the request of a similar discussion that we had on the steering committee the steering committee that works with the Office of Civil and Forensic Mental Health. We've been meeting for, I don't know, at least 2 years now. And I've been on that group, and it's a broad committee that includes BHA people, sheriffs, court people, hospital folks, people from all around the state. And the idea is to help focus the fines money from the fine committee related to the the consent decree with the federal court around the wait list to Pueblo. That's what kind of started all of that. So we've been chatting about many things over the last couple of years. And of course, this business with transportation order comes up consistently there as well. So I put this together primarily for that committee to mull over and see, and chew on and see if anybody is interested in taking this up as some kind of a legislative proposal, because I think, and that's what this is designed to do, is to be the basis for some kind of statutory change that would give authority to sheriffs and law enforcement to transport people for specifically mental health issues. Because a couple of years ago, legislation came in the wake of the craziness that happened during and after the COVID lockdown with all the riots and whatnot. So there was legislation that took away some of the law enforcement immunity to transportation that no one wants to touch. So this was sort of being proposed as an addition to that. So without touching that legislation at all, this would be added, is the idea, to see if this will help the situation. We have various issues in Denver, which I think are replicated across the state, that run the gamut from we're worried about our immunity to we don't have enough staffing to do it, to we're tired of taking people into the hospital and, these people are there 24 hours or less, and then they're, right back out on the street and everybody's calling us again. And why did we transport them in the first place? So there are a lot of issues attendant to this sort of thing, but this is the proposal that I came up with. And of course, I'm sure that all of the very bright minds of everyone who's looking at this will have comments and suggestions and additions and that sort of thing.
Judge Leith, what part of statute were you suggesting this get added to?
2765.
Okay.
As I read through it, Judge Leaf, it said that if ordered, law enforcement, EMS, sheriff, mobile crisis, pretty much any entity involved in the crisis continuum like that has the ability to transport. Does that mean mobile crisis teams?
What do you mean by that? Does it have to be more than one person?
No, what I mean by that is in some parts of the states, well, in many parts of the states, the goal of Colorado is to use the state hotline in order to dispatch mobile crisis to be able to see folks on scene without having law enforcement and EMS on scene. So if I'm a mobile crisis person and I show up on scene and I deem this person needing to be hospitalized, I have the authority under 2765 to sign the M1. At that point, then I have to call law enforcement or EMS to do the transport. So are you saying this would say I could transport that person on an involuntary hold?
Right. I lifted a lot of this language out of some national group language, and try to craft it so that it would be tailored to what we do in Colorado. But of course, if people, and this is why it's a draft, right? So if you think it needs to be more specific or have some different language in terms of who has authority to do what, that's what we're here to to listen to
Yeah.
and modify it. I mean, this has not been given to any legislator that I'm aware of, and this is a real draft, a working draft.
Yeah. I mean, the whole point of secure transport is that it is just that, it is secure. And the statute language says that when on an M1, someone must go via secure transport. And usually it's because they are involuntary. And so that's not usually a cooperative individual. Hence the need for that first response vehicle that's tailored to that. Many of the crisis teams around the state drive their own personal vehicles, so they're still going to rely on law enforcement.
Because their personal vehicle is not a secure transport.
Oh, no, it's a RAV4, it's a Highlander, it's a Subaru Outback. And that's what they show up on scene with. The other piece we had discussed a meeting or so back was in the EC statute, the EC statute clearly states that law enforcement is, let me see if I can pull up the wording. Law enforcement, when transporting, is released from liability for, I'm trying to find it on the fly. But if we were able to mimic that language into the M1 language, I think that would also help. However, across the state, I do know that law enforcement will receive court orders for pickup and they'll walk away and say no. So I don't know how there's a forcible anything, even when they have a court order, they're not comfortable.
Well, that's the point of this, is to provide that backup. What's the statute you're thinking of for the EC?
It's the emergency commitment statute, which is different than 2765. It's the 2781-111. But there is specific verbiage in there that releases law enforcement from liability that we were just hoping we could take that sentence and stick it over there.
Sure.
I will say that across the country, there are crisis teams that do allow a handful that do allow mobile crisis to transport. But they put the cart before the horse. They allow the transport before the policies and procedures and means of a appropriate transport vehicle are in place. And there have been some pretty major issues with it.
I say Taylor did drop that language from the EC statute into the chat, where it says law enforcement or emergency service personnel who act in compliance with this section are acting in the course of their official duties and are not criminally or civilly liable.
There you go. That was it.
All right. I can certainly add that. Thank you.
Yeah. I just think we are taking an enormous step to say that a civilian can put an M1 in their car.
So that's the way you're
I
reading
wouldn't do it. I would not do it.
That's the way you're reading this. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's exactly what I'm reading. It says that if ordered, where did you highlight a minute ago?
Okay. So basically,
Yeah, there you go.
this should be modified then to clarify that no, they're not supposed to put them in the RAV4.
What would they put them in then? I would just take mobile crisis personnel out altogether then, because there are some mobile crisis teams that have crisis vehicles. But I think unless you get really technical, you're going to find a director of an agency reads that and tells someone they can put someone in their own car. That's just disastrous, in my opinion.
Well, and it looks like that the secure transportation provider is captured in most mobile teams who have agency allocated vehicles have that secure transportation license anyway. So I think it would cover the teams that do have SVT, but then remove what you're concerned about, Michelle.
Yeah.
I had a couple questions. I mean, one, thanks for drafting this because I do think it's needed and helpful. Can the paramedics, this would suggest the paramedics could take someone to a facility besides a hospital, which I don't think is allowable now.
See, that's the other thing. That was so the very bottom of that page is another mobile crisis personnel if you want to strike. Yeah. That's the other thing too, is many EMS agencies are only able to transport to hospitals. And again, across the state, you've got fire departments that are volunteer that have EMS. You have fire departments that are paid that have EMS. You have standalone EMS medical facilities, medical agencies, and then you have county, and then you have hospital-based. And I don't know that they all have that free ability to drop somewhere besides an ER. They have to go to a medical facility. I will have to double check
Okay,
that.
that's my understanding as well. Like when we train on the M.5, so involuntary transportation, or the M1, they very clearly tell us like we've been instructed only to go to an emergency department. We can't take them to a designated facility.
Yeah, they're not allowed to go to the walk-in centers or the CSUs or ATUs. Yeah.
Which for people who are on like a long-term outpatient cert needing a pickup order, that's going to cause problems.
Of course.
Right. So I guess my question to you is, then do you want that to happen, that they can go to the walk-in center and not in a 2765 facility, not just the ER?
I think it's almost two separate issues. So I think like when we're talking about an M1, right, like or the 0.5, yeah, like the ED is totally appropriate. We would love to see more utilization of the designated facilities, but if EMS is not allowed to do that, like that's not, and it's not a deal breaker. But when we're talking about those long-term outpatient certs or even a short-term outpatient cert where a person just needs to be picked up for their court-ordered medication, like they need to be able to go to a designated facility to receive that injection. They're not going to be able to get that at an emergency department because the emergency departments don't recognize certifications.
Okay.
Is the goal to add this into the existing secure transport language? Or is this
Whatever.
a standalone?
2765, 109.5, or add it into 108.
Okay.
Those are a couple of ideas that I had.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the other question that comes up for me is, let's say there's no, it specifies psychiatric emergency room at the top there. So if that's not available, like, is there a risk that you would be asking someone to transport a patient to something like a walk-in center or a county, I think it said county behavioral health center, who's too sick to be handled there? And so,
That's
yeah,
why they
like, so
that-
I mean, it almost requires a little bit of triage ahead of time. Like, are you telling someone, hey, this person is too sick, but I'm going to require, sheriff or someone to take them to a walk-in center or ED diversion? And I almost worry about the specificity of psychiatric emergency room, like, because if you don't have a designated something so designated in your area, then it's not an option. And so should that just be emergency room generally? Although I appreciate that people don't want, necessarily to use ERs in the setting, but
Well, the language I propose says you can deliver respondent to the designated facility, the psychiatric ER, the county mental health center, and the execution of the order. And of course, in Denver, we give them a choice because you're exactly right? If like the STAR team is out there and they're kind of doing the triage and they're calling it in, they need to have the ability to direct where the person's going to go, or sometimes the person can be given a choice. If really all it is, it's not acute. They just need to have their shot, and it's because the doctor has now requested it because they've missed their appointment. So there's different scenarios where this could be used. So the
I say
idea
you're
was
giving
to make
latitude
it
to pick among these locations.
right. The idea was to make it so that the people using it actually had authority to do whatever they felt was needed in the moment, or based on the court order, right? You could petition the court order for different things too.
Well, and sometimes the court order will dictate where they're going. It doesn't necessarily leave it up to whoever's fulfilling the order.
Right. So that is something that at this point is specific to whatever court is issuing the order.
And I want to point out something clarifying. I think the first paragraph of this statute says that, or this proposed statute, is that these are people who are already under certification. So all the discussion about M1s and that type of transport doesn't apply. This is just for, I don't know if that was your intention or not, but I think this is just for people who are already under certification, already under the jurisdiction of the court. And then it's giving an array of options to transport them if they're not in compliance with that court-ordered certification. It's not dealing with M1s or M.5s.
Right, that's true.
Okay.
Are we trying to have this order also work for those court-ordered evaluations?
And the court-ordered evaluations. Yeah, because I did drop that in there.
Okay.
See, and the other thing, I don't wonder if this isn't bigger than just our ability to say this is a good idea, because we're including EMS, which is a medical-based service that functions under a medical director, and for them to receive a court order. I don't know how, we don't have Tiny on the call, but I don't know how they are able to, I don't know how that would work. And again, I think there are so many times that I read legislation and it sounds like in theory a good idea, but we don't know the nuances of the regulations of the people who were sticking into something. And then something gets put forth and they're like, well, this is great, but we can't do this. So I would
They
love.
can change their regulations, right? The regs are something else again. Just because you have a reg now that speaks to what the statute is and the statute changes, you probably need to change your regs. So I'm not overly concerned with that, honestly.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, like I said, you're talking multiple types of entities across the state. And yes, you can go to the state EMS authority and say, can you change your regs around this? But right now, even the state authority over EMS has said, EMS, we are stating that EMS will not be transporting .5s. So they've taken a big stance on certain things. So and again, I think everyone feels respected when they're able to be part of a conversation before they are then mandated to do something. So I think this would be a great thing, that if we're going to include law enforcement and EMS in this, that we get their input on how this is reasonable, logical, and plausible for them to be able to do. I don't think they
Well, like I say, law enforcement is represented on the steering committee.
EMS should be as well. They're huge.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that's involved with that.
I would be happy to send you some RETAC connections. I know there's a couple folks in Denver that are really big with state regulations for EMS. But again, I feel very strongly that when we push things forward, that all the voices are at the table because then they're less likely to want to help when they're now told they have to do something when they were never involved in the conversation. And the original transport order that came out a year and a half, I don't know, just 2 years ago, that was one of the biggest things, was that EMS didn't have a voice. And then all of a sudden they were told, you need to do this. And a lot of the agencies around the state just went, hold on a second. We just need to understand this better. But I think that would just be a good pool of people in that industry to find one or two people who could give you that. There's a lot of that I don't understand the nuances about, but I know enough to know they're pretty tight.
All right. You have your hand up.
Darren.
Yeah, I just wanted to add. So I sit on the BHDC-JJS task force that Ryan recommended, and we have a crisis subcommittee that has been talking about this transportation issue as well. And we have some representatives from a fire EMS system, as well as, they have connections with other places. So if we could share this with them and see if they could float it through some of their colleagues as well, that might get us a start to this conversation with EMS. I know UPass is available often on this call, but this is another large suburban department that might be able to provide some feedback as well. And I did also want to add, some of the conversations we're having in that crisis subcommittee is around having options that are available, recognizing that we're always in this which comes first, the statutory change or the regulation change. And it often ends up being somebody says the statute change has to come first, and somebody else is saying that the regulation change has to come first. And so I think, not that I have a solution to that, but part of, I think, the conversation is sometimes we have to start somewhere and recognizing that there's an option now that's available. And if EMS regs don't allow for it, then they're not going to do it. But if statutorily it's a possibility and they change their regulations, then at least there's another resource. But until sometimes that legislation changes, those regulations also won't change because there's no statutory authority to do the thing. So they're not going to put in the work to change the regulations to do something they're not allowed
That's
to
exactly
do.
right.
So okay, thanks, Judge Leith. I think that's a conversation we've been having both with law enforcement and with EMS folks. So definitely we'll bring this back if that's okay.
There's no reason not to push this forward and push it out to them just because they don't sit at this particular table.
Anybody else have any thoughts that they want to make sure we capture?
Yeah, one other thing that I think Hal Mandler brought up the last time we talked about this statute, I don't see him here, but I had a long discussion with him afterwards, is if you have any language in there that's not, so if you have maze, I think there's the mental health transport order may be directed to the sheriff. If there's any mays instead of shalls, then law enforcement is going to be like, no, we don't have to do it.
Oh, you think that the mays should all be shalls?
Well, where appropriate, but I remember that was some feedback he gave.
Okay.
Agreed. They certainly pull out the maze.
Okay.
Yep, I fixed that in our draft.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything for Judge Leith while we have her? Frank, you said you want, sorry, I don't have that up. Lean on BHA to consider county mental health center language. Can you say more?
Yeah, it just, the language references county mental health center, and that's kind of a term of art that's not a thing really. So considering the different, whether it's comprehensive provider or the different types, of facilities, want to be more specific to the
So
current.
what's the suggested language?
I don't know yet, to be honest.
Yeah, usually we're not calling them CMHCs anymore. We're calling them comprehensive providers. So we can
comprehensive providers.
Mm-hmm.
But like comprehensive is a specific designation that is pretty limited as well. So I mean, same with psychiatric emergency room. I mean, like, what if you?
It is.
I mean, large hospitals that don't have that designation. I mean, if you need to take someone to an emergency department.
But back to, well, yeah, I mean, there's
same with county mental health centers. Like the specificity there is.
Well, we can, I mean, this is a working draft, right? Like, so we can definitely look at all of those because most of them say like emergency medical services facility or designated facility. And that's kind of been the standard language throughout 2765. So we can definitely match it.
That's what, that's what I was flagging. It's just aligning the terms. I think back to Katie's point, though, I think about this in relation specifically to somebody who's on a certification. If it's, I don't know. Are you going to direct people back to the professional holding the cert? Just thinking about.
No, this is the comprehensive, whatever it's called. Sorry, I don't know the language. Is that
provider?
Okay, is that now the provider, the community mental health provider that has the ability to do certifications? Because in that case, it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Typically, we do have non-comprehensive providers that can hold cert.
Yeah. Because in this situation, we're talking really about outpatient certifications, and the organizations that hold outpatient certifications are typically the comprehensive mental health provider. So yeah, just thinking through that, and that language might be
And they
appropriate.
and oftentimes they're the entity that's requesting the pickup order.
Mhm.
Right. Right. So a lot of times they'll actually, right, Katie, they want them to come to the center. They don't
Yeah.
really want them to go down to the hospital.
Yeah,
Right.
it's to avoid going to the emergency department again. It's hopefully to get them, like if there are co-responders or mobile crisis that can go out and give medications in the community, do that first. And then if the person is still unwilling, then maybe bring them into like a walk-in clinic. And then if the person's still refusing after that, then we're looking at an emergency department.
Right. The only real problem with what you just said is that the sheriffs don't want to wait around at the walk-in while they figure out that this person is going to refuse, and then they have to take them down to the hospital, right? They want to take them someplace and drop them off and be done with it.
Yeah. The issue becomes like if they have, for example, if they're just refusing their medication and it's a long-acting injectable, the emergency departments don't honor it. So they're not,
Well, they might not have it, like they don't have the med, so but
well, and they look at certifications as like, this is not our issue. That's been my experience with a lot of the EDs and my comprehensive providers on my caseload. That if somebody is sent to the emergency department, like the emergency department's not coordinating with the comprehensive provider, because they're like, we don't recognize your certification and we don't honor it. They only will look at M1s as being able to hold someone permanently, not permanently, but you know what I mean, hold
Yeah.
someone.
This was the whole reason the transport order was put in place, or the secure transport was put in place to begin with, is because law enforcement and EMS don't want to touch this. So they wanted a way for us to be able to do this without them as the holdup and the barrier. And that's where secure transport came from to begin with. The problem is not every community has a secure transport provider.
and I guess like if the sheriffs don't want to wait around, like say you take this patient to the outpatient clinic and there's a comprehensive BHC who sees the patient, do the sheriffs need to hang around? Like they see the patient, oh, they're too sick, they're not doing well, we need to get them into the emergency department. I mean, then you use your usual, I mean, it's a 911 call, right?
Well, I mean, if we're
It's a
talking
little
about
messy, but
it
yeah,
is. And
get
so
them
one of the
there.
things that happens, so our comprehensive providers under safety net, like they can't just refuse to take people, if that makes sense. So even if they get somebody who's too acute, they still need to work and figure out transportation. And it's not always just call 911 and get an ambulance or a sheriff here. It can be more complicated than that if it's beyond their ability to, like if they don't have inpatient or like an ATU, a CSU, they don't have somebody that can hold somebody overnight, then it becomes very complicated of how to get someone to the right level of care. If they're so decompensated, they're not taking their meds, right? And they show up to the designated provider, they might get their meds, but if they're still so dysregulated that they aren't appropriate to just be released back on their own, it can be complicated. I think the only thing that we really need to focus on trying to solve is just having the ability for sheriff or law enforcement to enforce the pickup order with the liability piece. Like that's really our biggest barrier right now.
Right.
Yeah.
The second barrier is when you ask that question about can't they just drop them off? The answer is not always. And that's one of the other reasons why many agencies do not want to even put their hands on somebody, is because they show up at that ER and the ER will not let them leave. And now they're stuck as security for those patients, and they don't have the ability to do that. And they end up fighting with the ER over, I have to go, I can't do this. And they'll say, well, you brought them in, they're on a hold and they're not cooperative. We're not taking, the liability for this ourselves without you. And they force the law enforcement to stay there as security. even
Are
though.
you saying that there's hospitals around the state that don't have security?
Oh, no, they have security, but law enforcement, half the security in the state they're hired, they're trained for 2 weeks, and they're given a taser, and they don't trust them. And there are a couple facilities that literally you have an uncooperative patient, security will walk up and go, I'm not touching them. And an ER will call for local PD to come into that ER. And
Okay.
so there are places where when folks show up, the ERs will not let law enforcement leave, which is why they don't want to transport them to begin with.
Yeah, I get reports of law enforcement leaving patients in handcuffs and then leaving anyway.
Yep. Like this is such an enormous mess.
It is.
Right, but I guess my question to you is, should those situations drive what we're trying to do with this?
Oh, I'm not saying that they should drive anything. I'm just saying these are all the things to be aware of.
I know, but is it going to result in a modification to the language? What you're telling me?
I think it goes back to we need to solve the pickup order issue first. I think everything
Yeah.
else is going to hopefully fall in line. I mean, the biggest thing that we hear is law enforcement does not want to be involved because they don't have protection under the law.
Right.
And that's really what we need to solve so that we can at least start having those outpatient pickup orders be fulfilled. That's
Right,
our
and that's-
biggest concern.
This is pretty much what this thing is designed to try to address. Right, but these nuanced situations that you're talking about, those seems to be a little bit of a different issue. And is that really going to say, well, we're not going to do this then because of those types of things?
No, and there's opportunity in there for BHA to work with both law enforcement and emergency departments to kind of train them on what the expectation is. But if we can get this piece solved, I think it will be easier for BHA to come in and say, here's the expectation and here's how the law backs you up.
Right.
One
And
of
I
the
think that statement about liability being released that you cut and pasted from the EC statute, I think that should probably go in the overall 2765, 105. Like I wouldn't house it right here. I think that needs to go where they talk about the 0.5 and 105, where they talk about it in 106, wherever it is in the statute. It shouldn't be contained to just this. Somehow it needs to be something that pours through the entire 2765 statute, period.
Well, and if we're thinking of creating its own standalone section, like Judge Leaf put in here 2765 109.5, we could put language in here that would be applicable to all transportation, regardless of what level of care or what section of the 2765 process an individual is in.
Because I misspoke in the beginning talking about the M1s and the 0.5s. This is just pickup orders, but I think that's the piece that we talked about in the beginning, and that's where my head went, was that liability phrase needs to be for M1s, M.5s. It needs to be for the whole thing, not just pickup orders. So yes.
Yeah, we can definitely tailor it that way. Taylor has her hand up.
I was just gonna add in, I agree with that, but also that's been the feedback that I've heard in my trainings with law enforcement, EMS, kind of et cetera, across the state, is they would like some sort of language within all of the statute sections for their transport that's covering it. So I think it would be important to look at adding that to those sections, to transportation hold, emergency mental health hold, but then also either in a separate section for transport on certifications, or just into the certification sections where it talks about this is how to petition the court for the order, and then this is what the court's order would be. And then also adding in, and this is the coverage for law enforcement or EMS or secure transport who's providing it.
We've got about 10 minutes left. What else do we need to tackle with this? Because I don't think we're going to get to our last agenda point today, and I don't want to start that conversation.
I was also going to add too that I was about to write it in the chat, but one of the things law enforcement has also discussed, and I've seen some letters outlining this as they pull back, that the use of force statute doesn't specify authority to use force in transportation situations. So I know you're all considering this under 2765 and broadly, not just certs, but also involuntary transport. But you may also want to look at the you know, criminal law under use of force. I don't know this citation.
We do have that Judge Leith put in here, like they to use such restraints as reasonably necessary to protect and safeguard. So I don't know if that's the same language you're referring to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the language Judge Leith has to anticipate that concern.
I'm not sure, Frank, I'm not sure what you want me to do with your comment.
I think it's what you have here is an attempt to address what I just described, hearing some of those concerns, whether they want it in the I don't know if that's called the criminal law or law enforcement law, but there's a section, I think it's Title 12 on use of force, that they cite that they lack authority. And so, if this language suffices, we just have to get their feedback on where the right place to address this is. So I wouldn't change anything right now.
I say it sounds like you're suggesting it needs to be in both places.
Potentially, I'd leave it up to the lawyers for the law enforcement to figure out. But
fair.
Yeah, I guess two quick thoughts and a question for the BHA. So one is, I also like this because I think I don't want to speak for CBHCs, but it does seem like it makes people more comfortable holding a short-term certification for patients if they feel like they can get transport, and that's good. I still wonder, does this mean that sicker patients are going to be ending up in offices or behavioral health centers, and what happens in that setting? I don't know. I think it's just something to track, which begs my question, which is, does the BHA have capacity or thoughts on how to track the use of orders like this? Like, is there a mechanism? How often are these happening? What are the outcomes? Are there adverse events or injuries related to transportation orders, and where do these patients go?
We don't currently. That doesn't mean we couldn't add something. So later this fall, winter into spring, we're doing those ASAM level 4 revisions to all of our rules. Chapter 11 is one I'm working on. And we have a whole section in there around data collection. So we could absolutely request that this becomes a data point of was a transportation order required, because it is disaggregate information that's being collected. So we could figure out a way to try and get that data point. Obviously not something that we would want to put into rule until we have something like this to back up. But yes, we could move that direction of collecting that data. Gina?
So I'm also on the task force that Aaron is on and on the subcommittee. So I don't want to expand what you're saying, but I'll just put 2 points out and see if you want to add it. One is we've heard from our EMS person is the need or the ability to treatment in place. I know this is kind of limited to the involuntary commitment, court orders, but sometimes when law enforcement is there and you actually have taken them to a center, that may be enough to allow treatment in place. So you don't actually have to take them to an ED. So you may want to add language of, or treatment in place where appropriate by those entities that are doing it, if it's EMS responding, because also that's kind of goes into a funding issue as well, but at least for this particular statute. I know it's also expanding it and they kill what you're trying to do here, because I think this is a great start, is when you get in a hospital setting, I'm putting my defense attorney hat on now, is what gets resolved is criminal charges get filed, and they end up taking literally emergency departments deciding to, because they are volatile, any little pushy shovey, because they're first responders, they have a criminal case and they can get rid of them easily. So we did a lot of data a couple years ago, and over 30% of the competency cases raised were during pushy shoveys and EDs and things like that on mental health
But don't you think that language would need to be elsewhere
Yes, I'm
in
just saying,
addition to this?
I'm almost putting in, like I've always kind of advocated, is that there needs to be an almost automatic self-defense, for lack of better words, or extenuating circumstances for someone who's on an M1 hold, so those assault charges aren't filed.
Actually, I'm speaking about your comment about the treatment in place language.
I'm leaving that up to you guys, and I don't want to complex your or put a killing on the bill, that you're doing, but aren't we forcing always transport when it just sometimes needs at the scene can be done?
Well, I don't disagree with you. Let's start there. And I've heard, the same types of comments that if, they're willing to accept the medication right at the front doorstep, why can't we just do it there? But I don't know that this transport statute, without anything else, would authorize it sufficiently, I guess is a better way to put it. So
maybe is it a different section? Excuse me, maybe put or also see the other section. So at least it refers to it. I don't know. I'm just
Katie, what do you think? Or is she still there?
No, I'm here. I think maybe the treatment in place needs to be in the actual court order. If this statute's just trying to give law enforcement the sense of safety to enforce these types of orders, I don't think it, I think if you put it into statute for the transportation order, it might give an option out for law enforcement to not enforce these orders, if that makes sense. Like it's just another option out if it's in this statute, but I absolutely think it should be part of every court's order when they do issue transportation.
But that goes back to what is the treatment that's being discussed? Is this someone who missed meds and needs their IM and their Invega shot is at a center? I mean, like what is the treatment? Because again, EMS can only do certain things.
Right. That's what the motion tells us.
Yeah.
What's needed. The doctor's motion tells us what's needed. So the order is in response to the doctor's motion. We don't make it up on our own.
Oh, no. So I hear you. So if someone were to, if with the treatment in place, most often I hear treatment in place where EMS will medically clear someone on scene so they don't need an ER before being dropped at a detox, right? They have the power, authority, and full capability to do medical clearance with what they have. But if the doctor's order is pick up for court-ordered meds, you wouldn't want a police officer to go, oh, EMS can do the treatment on scene, so I don't need to be there. They can just go and give the shot, not understanding medics can't do that, is my point. I think that treatment in place is a good piece, but I think there's a lot of ambiguity around what it would mean. Does that make sense?
So we have less than a minute. Why don't we table this conversation and we can bring it back up as part of our agenda for May. Judge Leith, is that something that you would be interested in joining or have the availability to join?
It's more about availability.
Fair.
When's the meeting in May?
May 23rd. Same time. We didn't get a chance to discuss whether or not we would do a hybrid, so I suspect we'll just stay virtual.
Might be able to do May 23rd. And then are you able to get me a copy of what the markups that you've been working on as we've been discussing this?
Yeah, I'll give you a pretty copy.
That would be awesome. All right, May 23rd. At what time?
10 is when we start, but we can figure out when we would need you specifically.
Yeah, I can definitely do 11.
So why don't we plan on that and we'll have you join us at 11?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for your flexibility. All right. I say, I know I don't want to take any more time. We do have quorum right now if we want to vote on minutes just to get that taken care of. Just throwing that out as an option. If not, we can look next time too.
Let's do that really quickly. Is that okay, Jessica? Can you pull the minutes back up?
See if I can. We've got February.
Because I know we went through February's and then we're about to vote and realize we didn't have quorum.
Yep.
Perfect.
I'm just gonna scroll fairly steadily because I have an 11:30 meeting.
Can't see, by the way, I don't know if anyone else can.
Oh, how did my screen stop sharing? Yikes.
And then I've gone through the February one, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from February. If anyone else wants to spend a minute or two going through and seeing
I'll
if they
second them. I was here last time.
Beautiful. February minutes are approved.
All right, let's look at March.
Let's look at March. March minutes were for the last meeting.
Yep. We just went through some CBHC updates, some eating disorder stuff, the stuff for ASAM level, or not level 4, 4.0.
It was a good discussion about the ASAM stuff, PS.
Thanks. And then we keep trying to have this discussion of our innovative ideas. So maybe we'll put this one earlier before Judge Lath is able to join us next time, and we'll prioritize our list.
I would love if we could do that because we're going to be hitting the time where we have to put that report together for the BHA. So if you wouldn't mind kind of highlighting that, I would love those to be the beginning of next month's meeting.
Yep.
And then again, I'll make a motion to approve the March minutes.
I'll second.
Bam, bam. Happy Friday, everybody. Thank you so much for the great discussion and good conversations and questions. Let's wish Ryan the best at the Capitol, and I hope you all have a lovely weekend. We are officially adjourned. Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.